Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Most schools are closed. Federal workers going to be doing it from home. Roads are not too bad, but some places are pretty dicey. We got some trees down. It's, the morning of a snowstorm in the Washington, D.C. area. Hopefully the last snowstorm of the year. I don't want to jinx us, but we're at the end of February. Usually that's the sign, right? You make it to March, you don't need more snow, Bethany. Bethany, tell me this is the end of the snow, please.
I'm not Puscatawnying Phil this. You're jinxing all of us. If I'm sitting here in 2 weeks, snowed in again, I'm gonna be cursing your name. I'm gonna be shaking my fist in the air, Larry O'Connor.
That's fair enough. No. You know what? And I'll deserve it. I'll be in the Virgin Islands. It'll be
not Puerto Vallarta.
No, not Puerto Vallarta at all. We'll talk about the insanity down south of the border and the fact that Democrats would love to import that kind of chaos into this country a little bit later. Also later at 6:35, Kevin Mooney's got a book about offshore wind turbines affecting our United States Navy and Coast Guard. At 7:05, Joe DeGenova, 8:05, Steve Moore, and at 8:35, Delegate Tom Garrett of Virginia, because Abigail Spanberger is going to be giving the State of the Union. All right, Susan Rice, former ambassador to the United Nations, former advisor to Barack Obama, former advisor to Joe Biden. You know her. She's the one who, let's give the litany. She's the one who ended up taking the fall on Benghazi. I think they put her under the bus because she wasn't an elected official and she wasn't running for any election. So she was the one who was able to do that for them. As Mark Hemingway reminds me, she was the one who enabled the Rwandan genocide under Bill Clinton. And then she's the one who came up for it and said, yeah, we really missed that one. Sorry, man. We can't believe we didn't speak out sooner about that under Clinton. And then during the Obama administration, she also allowed the Syrian genocide to happen. You remember Obama's Red Line? She was the big advisor over the... Yep. So genocides happen all the time under Susan Rice's watch, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And then she recently, during a podcast, had this statement to say, specifically targeting corporations in this country, big businesses, who have been doing business with the Trump administration. Take a listen to what she said.
But when it comes to the elites, the corporate interests.
Hold on.
The law
I'm
firms,
sorry. I got to pause there. This is a woman who was the ambassador to the United Nations, who has advised 3 presidents and has been at the highest levels of Oval Office meetings about world, international, American events. And she's calling other people elites? Are we serious about this, Bethany?
Yep. All right, keep going.
No self-awareness. All right, I'm sorry. I couldn't let that stand. Okay, so she's going to tell you about the elites.
Interests. The law firms, the universities, the media. I agree with you, Preet. It is not it's not going to end well for them. For those that decided that it was, that they would act in their perceived very narrow self-interest, which I would underscore is very short-term self-interest. And, take a knee to Trump. I think they're now starting to realize, wait a minute, this is not popular. Trump is not popular. What he is doing, whether on the economy and affordability or on immigration now, is not popular. And that there is likely to be a swing in the other direction. And they are going to be caught with more than their pants down. They're going to be held accountable by those who come in opposition to Trump and win at the ballot box. And I can tell you, Preet, as I talk to leaders in Washington, leaders in our party, leaders in the states, if these corporations think that the Democrats, when they come back in power, are going to, play by the old rules, and say, oh, never mind, we'll forgive you for all the people you fired, all the policies and principles you've violated, all, the laws you've skirted. I think they've got another thing coming because, just like when Trump thought, okay, I'll redistrict and the Democrats won't have the guts to play hardball, they're going to be surprised. Democrats have had a belly full, and we're not going to play by the old set of rules when these guys are playing by a very different set of rules. We're going to play by the law, we're not going to violate the law the way they do, but we're not going to be suckers. And so I think, whether you're a law firm, whether you're a university, whether you're a media entity, whether you're a big corporation, whether you're big tech, you need to play a long game, not this short game that has been so detrimental. There will be an accountability agenda. Companies already are starting to hear they better preserve their documents. They better be ready for subpoenas. If they've done something wrong, they'll be held accountable. And if they haven't broken the law, good for them. If they've done the right things, good for them. That also will be noted and remembered. But this is not going to be an instance of forgive and forget. Right. The damage that these people are doing is too severe to the American people and to our national interest.
Do we play the Godfather theme here or the Sopranos theme?
Yeah, that's called a threat. My favorite part about that clip was when she said, you better hold on to your documents. Yeah. So now we know that you better hold on to your documents if you're a Republican.
I don't know where my birth certificate is. I haven't seen it since I was 7. Yeah, hold on to your documents. And if you didn't break the law, good for you. In other words, you're going to be guilty until you prove to me that you didn't break the law, whatever that means. And by the way, there's going to be a shifting definition of what breaking the law means, because from their perspective, if you cooperated with the Trump administration, actually worked with them, clearly you broke the law. Clearly.
My favorite, I've said this before on the show a number of times, but one of my favorite exit poll questions immediately following this last election that gave Democrats a lot of hope right as the polls closed on the East Coast was people were asked, especially in Pennsylvania, like, what was the impetus for your vote? What drove you to vote the way that you did? Not asking you how you voted, just what drove your vote. And people responded, preserving democracy. That was a key factor in what they wanted out of the result of their vote. And Democrats were like, yeah, they care about democracy. That's why they voted for Kamala. Yeah. And then it turned out, the people who cared about voting for preserving democracy were Trump voters because they wanted the norms. And it turned out the norm keepers were Republicans. I think this is a great ad for Republicans moving forward, because when they tell you who they are, believe them.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, Carrie Locust, friend of the program from Independent Women's Forum, she points out, the old rules that we all lived through, by the way, those old rules under Barack Obama and under Joe Biden for 4 years, that's when Democrats try to ban their political opponent from the ballot and throw him in jail and put the fear of God into anybody who supported him. But those are their rules. Those are the rules that they live by. Also of note, that woman you just heard, Susan Rice, making that open threat of retribution against anyone in the private sector or universities or other seats of power, the elites, as she called them, if they are cooperating with and working with the Trump administration or, God forbid, supports the Trump administration. That woman sits on the board of Netflix. Mm-hmm. And Netflix is, in the moment, trying to do a takeover of Warner, and they need federal approval for that.
Yeah. I don't know. Doesn't seem wise from Netflix.
Seems to me, if I'm a Republican senator or congressman and I have a say, or if I'm part of the Trump administration and Susan Rice is saying stuff like that, I don't think Netflix is going to really get a good hearing from me. I think there's some questions to ask the CEO of Netflix about the activities of their board members. It's 6:15. Yeah, listen, I appreciate the candor here from Susan Rice. I like it when the Democrats just openly admit and kind of flex the fact that they run their party and when they're in power, run the government like, a cartel, like mobsters. Once again, 10A, here's Susan Rice with a clear warning for anybody in this country who wants anything to do with our government or interacting with our government, or really just sort of, hey, if you're Coca-Cola and you didn't boycott, Jim Crow 2.0 like you did during the Biden administration, or if you're a commercial airline and you worked with the new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, on getting new air traffic control systems and you didn't resist, well, here's Susan Rice's message for you.
And I can tell you, Preet, as I talk to leaders in Washington, leaders in our party, leaders in the states, if these corporations think that the Democrats, when they come back in power, are going to, play by the old rules, and say, oh, never mind, we'll forgive you for all the people you fired, all the policies and principles you've violated, all the laws you've skirted.
Oh yeah,
I think they've got another
the
thing
people
coming.
you fired and the principles that you that means you got rid of your DEI departments. By the way, that's what she means by that. Just FYI. Okay, let's remind everybody what the old rules are. J.P. Morgan Chase, the nation's top banker. In fact, it could be the top bank in the world. Last I checked. You'll remember that there was some rumor that Jamie Dimon was in line to be the chairman of the Fed, and Trump said, no, hell no, I'm not going to nominate Jamie Dimon. When he was with J.P. Morgan, they debanked me. And then last month, he opened a lawsuit against J.P. Morgan Chase for debanking him, shutting down all of his bank accounts and making it impossible to operate because all of his money was at J.P. Morgan Chase. Well, this weekend, J.P. Morgan admitted publicly that it closed over 50 Trump accounts in February of 2021 because they told him he needed to find a more suitable institution for his business needs. This under pressure, of course, from the newly sworn-in Biden administration. But, Bethany, those were the old rules that Democrats played by. The polite rules when the Biden administration forced J.P. Morgan to debank Donald Trump.
This is the debanking stuff is one of the scariest things that Democrats do, and when Susan Rice says everything is on the table, this is it.
That's right.
And I was interesting. I was sitting with some Israelis that under the Obama administration, They did this to lots of people, and one of them was Israelis who were living in the so-called West Bank in Judea and Samaria. If they committed settler violence, and I'm using quotation marks in the air because if someone attacked them and they defended themselves, that qualified as settler violence.
That's right. How dare you defend yourself against the people who were trying to murder you?
So there was an Obama rule. I'm sorry, it was a Biden rule that debanked them, and so they couldn't even hire a lawyer to get themselves rebanked. I don't know if that's a word, because they had no access to their funds in order to hire a lawyer in order to
it's outright theft.
Yeah, they didn't have internet. They didn't have any debanking is the most terrifying proposition to me because you just can't do anything.
Yeah, that's right. This is terrific for the next midterm elections as well as the presidential election of 2028 because it's very rare that they're this open about what they intend to do when they seize the reins of power again. By the way, from JP, and I don't know how this is going to work out, that this is part of a settlement with JP Morgan. Trump sued in Florida because he lives there now. JP Morgan's trying to move it to New York. I'm sure it's just out of convenience. It has nothing to do with the jury pools in those two jurisdictions that JP Morgan is trying to game. But I'm not. After this admission, that sounds like it's moving towards some sort of settlement for the $5 billion lawsuit that President Trump has levied against J.P. Morgan. But the fact that they conceded this and again said, no, we're going to close all of your accounts now that Biden's president. You need to find a more suitable institution. But Mario Nawfal on X points out that J.P. Morgan also had accounts with Jeffrey Epstein for many years after he was convicted for soliciting sex with a minor. And they ended up paying $290 million to settle lawsuits from the victims. But Jeffrey Epstein was a suitable client for them. Donald Trump, under Joe Biden, was not a suitable client for them. That tells you exactly these new rules, or old rules, that Susan Rice is talking about. It's 6:23.
Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It is O'Connor and Company on a snowy Monday morning here, the 23rd day of February. Happy birthday to my brother, Kevin O'Connor. Today's my brother, Kevin O'Connor's birthday. How about that? Yep.
That's a very Irish name.
It is a good one. It's Kevin Daniel O'Connor. It's his birthday, and this is all I need to get him. That's the beauty of my job. I mentioned my brother's birthday on the air. Shopping done. It's worth a lot.
That's how it works. I don't think that's how it works. I think that you still owe him a call or a text, maybe a card.
My other brother will tell them they heard this.
You people still send cards.
Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGenova will be our guest, and at 8:05, Steve Moore on the tariff decision. 8:35, Virginia State Delegate Tom Garrett. Larry O'Connor, that's Bethany Mandel shaming me about not wanting to call my brother for his birthday. Good morning, Bethany.
You only have one brother, unless you have more. I don't know. Do you?
I have 3 brothers.
Oh, then yeah, I guess you don't have to call Kevin. Happy birthday, Kevin.
Speaking of Kevin Mooney, also a good Irish name, thank you very much. Kevin Mooney is a journalist, author of Climate Porn, and he's got a new book exploring how those offshore wind turbines are actually undermining national security. Kevin, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for letting the Irish on your show.
So, despite her last name, Bethany is also Irish, too. She married into it.
Oh.
She can find her birth certificate. Don't worry, she can vote. So, Kevin, these wind turbines, they're everywhere. They're ubiquitous, unless it's off Martha's Vineyard, of course, where, somehow the Kennedys were able to keep it from being in their backyard. But how, in fact, we know that they have been a detriment to seafaring birds and other sea life, and it's amazing that environmentalists like these things. But how are they undermining our national security exactly?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that's happening, and this is a problem up and down the East Coast, but the massive turbine blades, along with the highly reflective towers, interfere with radar and create all kinds of clutter. And that's the issue that various branches of the military raised in their reports, from we call it the Department of War now, the U.S. Navy, and others in the Air Force especially, have all raised alarms about how the wind turbines, the blades, create all kinds of noise and interference that make their radars less effective. One area where it's especially alarming is with our NORAD system. That's our early warning system, where the radars up in New York State and even New Jersey interfere with the NORAD operation. So
wow.
In many ways, it's becoming kind of a desperate situation. It's very active and very fluid. Trump's Interior Department had put out like a stop work order on the leases for offshore wind on 5 different projects, but the judiciary overruled that move, saying that the Trump administration's concerns were too ambiguous and too insufficient. I dissent because I think there's enough specific information out there to at least hit the pause button on these contraptions just to see where we are.
I have many questions. So let me just and actually I'll just do a 2-part question. Why are we just hearing about this? Because these things have been out there for a while. Has there been other administrations who have tried to keep this quiet because they don't want to jeopardize the wind turbine industry or the whatever the hell else they're achieving with this? Because I would think they would have known about this pretty early on, number one. And number two, could they have known about this before they even installed these things? Was the Defense Department never brought into the loop saying, hey, you think these are going to be a problem?
I'll answer number one first. This goes back to the Obama administration. And, of course, they were trying to make the case for offshore wind, but they didn't get the answers they wanted. They got answers from the military, from the Navy especially, saying that, in Norfolk, we have one of the largest, maybe even the largest naval base in the world, and these offshore wind devices will certainly at least cause us to readjust or recalibrate our sonars. Now, the problem that I think the current administration has, that a lot of that information became classified. They didn't want it released because, number one, it didn't fit their narrative, and number two, they weren't quite sure how to answer it. And that's sort of the catch-22 that we're in right now, because the information that I think would make the concerns less ambiguous, by definition, can't be released. The other part, did they know it beforehand? That's a difficult question to answer. I suspect probably yes on a certain level, but all things climate, I think, back in the Obama days, just trumped every other concern.
Has there been any sort of reevaluation of, now that these turbines have gone up a lot of places, I see them everywhere, has there sort of been a reckoning of like, has this worked the way that we wanted to, or does that not exist in the world of climate absolutists? Do they not sort of take an evaluation moment?
I'll tell you part of what has happened, and I'll just give you one example from my home state of New Jersey. That's the one place where there's a bit of good news, where they actually did put the kibosh on one of the offshore wind projects. And what the conservation and local environmental activist groups found is they were running headlong into opposition from the climate groups. That said, yes, there might be some environmental fallout from this offshore wind, but climate is such an emergency that really outweighs all other concerns. And I think for the first time you saw people take their blinders off to say that these so-called climate initiatives are not exactly good for the environment, are not exactly good for the local economy and for conservation. And it's all plugged into this nebulous, far-out concern about what climate might do over the next couple of decades of the next century. And I think that's interesting because I think what you do see is a local, genuine conservation movement reemerging that's beginning to take on the well-funded, self-described climate activist groups.
And we're just focusing on this one segment of it, the national security aspect and how these wind turbines have actually made us less safe. But there's so much more in your book. It's Climate Porn, How and Why Anti-Population Zealots Fabricate Science While Targeting American Capitalism, Freedom, and Independence. And if I could just in the final minute here, Kevin, you frame this all around the anti-population zealots. Back in the 60s, 70s, we were told there was a population boom. We told that the planet was being overpopulated. All of it was lies, and it's all been verified that it was lies. Even the New York Times has said, there was never a population problem. But it sounds like in your book here, Climate Porn, you sort of bring that back as the root of all of it. It's still these people who sort of are suspicious of, if not outwardly hostile toward humanity and the procreation of our human race.
Yeah, it really comes down to this Malthusian view that humanity is a blight to the planet, that it's a detriment to the planet, when in fact I turn that around. What we need is more people, more ingenuity, more technology, which will be good for the environment, good for the climate. So I try to turn this all upside down. But to your point, that's a long-held view. And I think it's been refolded and recalibrated into the climate movement, that we want to constrain human populations. I think it plugs into the abortion industry on many levels. I have that in the book. There's all kinds of interlocking relationships here we should be concerned about. But at the bottom of it, it is an anti-human, anti-biblical point of view that, don't go forth and multiply, instead subtract from your species. That's ultimately what's driving it.
You also make the point in your book that the natural pushback right now is sort of rooted in the America First agenda, but it's really a human first agenda. It's really, human beings are okay. In fact, on the net, listen, I have a lot of problems with humans, but beyond our sinful behavior, we're a net positive. Otherwise, God wouldn't have put us here. Kevin Mooney, great talking with you. Thanks for joining us, my Irish brother.
Likewise, anytime.
And happy birthday to you. Just another way of getting credit from my brother, Kevin. It's 6:44. A 21-year-old man was arrested at Mar-a-Lago. Oh, no, excuse me. He was not arrested. I apologize. Let me start that again. 21-year-old man was shot dead at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend after he drove through the outside perimeter gate, and he had a can of gasoline and a shotgun with him. He was told to put them down. He did not. He put down the gas can and then raised the shotgun, and that's when federal agents neutralized the threat. Yet another attempted assassination of Donald Trump. This has got to be a new record for a president, and at the time a candidate or former president, to have to endure ongoing assassination attempts. This one, of course, just comes a couple of miles away from the Trump golf course assassination attempt that occurred right before the election back in 2024. His name is Austin Tucker Martin, 21 years old, of Cameron, North Carolina. We don't know a whole lot more about him, and something tells me we're not going to learn much more about him because that's how these things happen.
What's sad about this, obviously, whatever, this is a troubled human being. Trump wasn't even there.
Yeah.
He did all this, and Trump wasn't even home. He was
There's
off
not a
doing
whole
his
lot of
president
rational
thing.
thought oftentimes in these cases, but you're right. I mean, Mar-a-Lago is, of course, a symbol of Trump and the Trump family, and so any kind of violence or threat that you can perpetrate against it, you get your political message heard. This behavior is either insane or it was meant to be, suicide by Secret Service or something.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
But this also comes at a time. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, according to the New York Post reporting, his family I think they knew that something was up and they were desperately searching for him beforehand. Oh. So obviously this was someone who was known to be very troubled.
On Friday or Thursday, the lieutenant governor of Illinois ran a campaign ad with a bunch of Illinois citizens looking at the camera saying F Trump, but they actually said the F word. Over the weekend at the Democrats' convention in San Francisco in the state of California, where all of the candidates for governor were meeting to try to rally support for their contentious primary, Katie Porter, former congresswoman, held up her famous little whiteboard she would bring to congressional meetings, and it had the words F Trump on it, and she led the entire convention in chanting F Trump. And listen, I'm all for free speech, and I'm all for criticizing our elected officials. That's what makes this country great. But there is a level of blinding hostility, just rage, just, this kind of profanity. The guy, can you imagine, running a campaign ad that said F Obama or F Kamala? I mean, obviously you would be drummed out of polite society, and now you're celebrated, but it all ends up being, as what Molly Hemingway often refers to as, assassination prep. It's sort of this dumbing down and dulling of the senses that dehumanizes Trump and those who support him and work with him to the level that it's okay to engage in violent acts against them. After all, you're saving democracy.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's it. And, they have made him into a cartoon villain. And it reminds me of what they did during W, when they would, burn him in effigy and da-da-da. And I look forward to, and I think it'll happen in like 10 years, when they whimsically look back at Trump the same way that we whimsically look back at GW. Right. The way that we talk about W now, he's quirky, he's charming. Oh, look, he's friends with Obama. He's delightful.
Bethany, even worse, it's the way they look back at him. The same ones who called him a Nazi and and Mitt Romney, for that matter, or oh my God, John McCain. They want to put a halo on his head, but we all remember what they said about John McCain when he was running against Barack Obama. Yeah,
and I think that they're going to do the same thing when they have a new supervillain. They'll find their new supervillain and they'll be like, remember Trump? He was so funny.
That's right.
Wasn't Trump funny?
By the way, and again, it's the old trope of I'm old enough to remember, but I am in fact old enough to remember Ronald Reagan. And if you're not old enough to remember Ronald Reagan, you should go to the Young America's Foundation exhibit they have in Santa Barbara, the Reagan Ranch Museum and Learning Center. There's a whole wall that they've put up of all the headlines and all of the TV and radio news reports that they said about Ronald Reagan, and all of the invective and all of the characterizations of him being a dunce and a fascist, and he's going to get us into World War III, and that he's reckless and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he's a racist, and all of those things they said about Ronald Reagan. And now Trump, Reagan wouldn't even be allowed into this Republican Party. They always do this to all of our leaders. The difference this time, though, is that Donald Trump has had to deal with an extraordinary number of violent attacks, and something needs to be done. Cooler heads need to prevail. Sadly, I don't think they have any cooler heads over there.
No.
It's 6:54.